The recent bomb attacks in Bali and Finland demonstrate that international terrorism can strike anywhere. An alleged terrorist leader from the Philippines, Professor Jose Maria Sison, lives in Utrecht. Although he does not yet have full political refugee status, he has been living in the Netherlands for 14 years. The American Dutch government say he is dangerous.
I have been criminalized as a terrorist without due process. I have been defamed by being the object of incitement of public hatred. My life is put in danger by the Dutch authorities who follow the dictates of Washington.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm fine. The Sison family has asked Utrecht-based lawyer Attorney Tom Lowe's help in defending Professor Sison against the allegations. On August 12, Professor Sison, the Communist Party of the Philippines and its armed wing, the New People's Army, were included in the U.S. government's list of international terrorists. The day after, on August 13, the Dutch government followed suit and also declared Sison and the two organizations as terrorists. What is Attorney Tom Lowe doing about this?
Ik ga uitzoeken in de Filipijnen wat is daar aan de hand en wat is de rol van professor Sison. Om wel deugdelijk onderzoek te doen. Ik doe wat de minister had moeten doen. Ik ga kijken van wat is hier aan de hand. Het kan toch niet zo zijn dat klakkeloos in dit land mensen terrorist bestempeld worden.
Are you saying that the Netherlands hasn't done its own investigation?
Absoluut niet. Want op 12 augustus zet meneer Bush dat neer en op 13 augustus, waar is het onderzoek?
We joined Attorney Tom Lowe in the Philippines during his inquiry of the extent to which Professor Sison, the CPP, and the NPA can be considered terrorists. We interviewed Filipinos from all walks of life and asked their opinion about the alleged terrorist, Professor Sison.
Do you know Mr. Sison?
I have come to learn Mr. Sison when I visited Utrecht in January 2000. At that time there I find at home with them. I found myself at home with them, speaking to them, discussing with them.
Even in the garbage dumps of Manila, the supposed terrorist leader is well known.
Do you know Mr. Sison?
Yeah, yes, I had read so many books about Mr. Sison.
And what is the function of Mr. Sison here in this country?
Well, Mr. Sison, in early 60s, Mr. Sison has already been fighting for the right and the freedom of the Filipino people. And now he is still fighting for the welfare of the Filipino people, for the freedom, not only the Filipino people, but the entire country of the Philippines.
Jose Sison, who is the leader and the founder of the New People's Army, is also my friend. That's why I am reaching out to them. I'm appealing to them. Let's put an end to this, the agony of the Filipino people. Let's put an end to the violence and the fighting and the conflict. The Filipino people, I repeat, are sick and tired of fighting. We want peace. Let's make peace.
Do you know Mr. Jose Maria Sison?
Yes.
Did you meet him?
Yes.
What is his position still here in this country?
Well, he was the recognized leader of the NDF, and now that they have been declared a terrorist organization by the United States.
According to Philippine authorities, the New People's Army has about 12,000 armed men and women. They operate in over 100 guerrilla fronts across the country, and from mobile camps like this, they launch their offensives against the government's armed forces. Andre is the leader of Unit 12 operating in the southern part of the Philippines' biggest island, Luzon.
You know Mr. Sison?
Yes, I know his name is Jose Maria Sison. He's from UP professor. I not being Jose Maria Sison.
You know about his work?
A political consultant of National Democratic Front of the Philippines.
Why is not here?
Jose Maria Sison, if he come here in Philippines, maybe he can kill, can assassinate.
The apprehension about the possible assassination is not unfounded. In 1983, opposition leader Benigno Aquino, who was exiled in the U.S., came home despite being advised not to do so. He was shot on the steps leading out of the airplane he flew in on and died there without even setting foot on Philippine soil. Philippine democracy was formally restored after the dictator Ferdinand Marcos fled in 1986, but it has not changed the massive poverty in the country. Some 80% of 80 million Filipinos live below the poverty line of €2 per day. The elite and its armed forces still rule the land. The government is actively campaigning against Professor Sison and other vocal critics of government like him. This graffiti says that Sison is taking holidays in Europe.
What you're trying to establish in the Philippines, you would call it rebellion.
No, I would use a more dignified term, revolution. There is an armed revolution going on.
The New People's Army is also killing people. Can you imagine that people call this terrorism?
If we talk about killing in sheer terms, it will be the other side, the military, police, and the deputized private armies.
No, but the People's Army has got arms as well. We saw that.
Yes, that's right. I'm referring to a fact in the Philippines. There's a civil war in the Philippines. It is a two-sided thing. Now, you may focus on. It depends on you. You may start talking about killing on the side of the NPA, but I would like to point out that the NPA is bound by certain rules. It's not a wild force, a terroristic force.
The Americans don't agree. They placed Professor Sison, the CPP, and the NPA on the terrorist list last month. But the question is whether these organizations and people on the U.S. government's list can rightly be called terrorists. If there exists any criteria, they are not known. An international group of jurists met last Friday in Amsterdam to discuss, among others, the lack of such criteria.
En dat kwam vandaag ook natuurlijk aan de orde, dat het niet heel duidelijk is wat onder terrorist wordt begrepen. Juist omdat de interpretaties van bepaalde invloedrijke lidstaten bij de Veiligheidsraad zo een grote rol spelen, met betrekking tot de samenstelling van de lijst, is dat natuurlijk een groot probleem.
The University of Leiden also studied who can be considered terrorists, by what country, and for what reasons.
Op VN-niveau bestaat, voor zover ik weet, niet een specifieke definitie van terrorisme, maar daar ben ik niet helemaal zeker van. Of er echt een definitie is van wie is een terrorist. In ieder geval is zelfs al is er zo'n definitie, dan is het nog aan de lidstaten om te bepalen wie aan die definitie voldoet. Dus elke lidstaat bepaalt wie als terrorist te beschouwen is. Dus er is een VN-verplichting om sancties te treffen met betrekking tot terroristen. Maar het is aan elke lidstaat om te bepalen tot wie die verplichting zich uitstrekt. Dus wie daar daadwerkelijk door getroffen wordt.
And how big is the influence of the U.S. on this?
in de praktijk is die wel heel erg groot.
And once you're officially declared a terrorist, you have to deal with sanctions. The Season family's bank account was frozen. The municipal government of Utrecht even had to terminate the €202 allowance of the Season family. The municipal government afterwards lodged a complaint against this measure on humanitarian grounds, although no official was willing to explain this policy on camera because this might annoy The Hague. Last week, the Ministry of Finance relented on humanitarian grounds and the monthly allowance was reinstated. Problem solved?
They take away state money given to me as welfare benefit, and then they put a color of terrorism on it, and that's a stupid thing to do. And then they return these benefits, so-called, as on humanitarian grounds.
Professor Sison refuses the allowance now. The only thing he wants is to be removed from the terrorist list and for a return to the situation before August 12th. In the meantime, Attorney Tom Law is continuing his inquiry in the Philippines on whether Sison is a terrorist or not.
I'm an attorney of the family Sison, and I'm now in the Philippines to research the labeling of the State Department and the Dutch government that Mr. Sison is a terrorist.
To me and to many of the Filipino people, Professor Sison is not a terrorist because he only is struggling with the poor people for life with dignity in its fullness. And he is waging a legitimate and legal struggle. And he is not a terrorist because a terrorist just attacks without reasons. But he has the reasons to be in the underground movement because the moment he surfaces, he will be politically persecuted.
In the Philippines, the poorest of the poor scavenge from garbage dumps such as in Manila for a living. Thousands also live in these dumps. Is that a normal situation?
I think it is not normal, but because the government does not heed, does not help the people here, so they still live here. Living here means like you're living in a cemetery. Because if you will try to tour around this place, you will find out that these people here do not have their living, they do not have jobs. They just earn their money from taking garbage here and selling it.
Is Mr. Sison a terrorist?
No, I don't think so. And I don't believe that Mr. Sison is a terrorist. Because Mr. Sison, I have not heard anything that Mr. Sison has done or killed someone. I know that Mr. Sison is a good person, and the thing that he wants to do is to save the Filipino people from those terrorists like the imperialist U.S. and our government.
The Speaker of the House of Representatives also lives in Manila.
Do you consider Mr. Sison as a terrorist? I personally would like to say that there are various grades of terrorism, and those who are also pushing the political movement. And I think you can say that Mr. Sison is also a political reformer. He is also a social reformer. But on the military side, they say he is a terrorist.
There is a thin line between who are terrorists and who are legitimately fighting for a cause.
And you're part of a government that welcomed the decision of the United States and followed by the Netherlands that CPP and the New People's Army, NPA, and they are called terrorists.
The United Nations resolution made us, after September 11, made us allies against terrorism. But I think each country should be the one to define what is terrorism. All terrorists within its borders, because it's part of sovereignty. You cannot have another country dictate and say, this man, your family, he's a terrorist.
The way you talk about him, you don't consider him to be a terrorist.
No, I don't.
Not a terrorist, according to the Vice President. After many interviews in the thorough investigation, Attorney Tom Lau has an answer on whether or not Professor Sison is a terrorist.
Na een week in de Filipijnen kan ik kort en goed zijn, meneer Sison is geen terrorist. En het lijkt wel of er een samenspanning is van overheid, de militaire macht, die hier een totaal andere, veel machtiger rol speelt als in Nederland. En de rijke families tegen de rest van het land. Want dat is het spel wat hier gespeeld wordt. Waarbij niet geschuwd wordt om waar iemand lastig wordt of zijn stem verheft te vermoorden. Gewoon letterlijk te vermoorden.
Does that justify the armed struggle?
Om het met een goed voorbeeld duidelijk te maken is bijvoorbeeld Mandela. Mandela heeft 27 jaar in de gevangenis gezeten en kreeg de titel terrorist. En nou is Mandela een bevrijdingsstrijder, een Nobelprijswinnaar, dezelfde Mandela die nog kort geleden terrorist genoemd werd. En wordt hij door de hele wereld als een morele autoriteit beschouwd die een rechtvaardige strijd gestreden heeft.
It all started in America with President Bush.
We will starve the terrorists of funding, turn them against each other, rout them out of their safe hiding places, and bring them to justice.
There is also another so-called terrorist who lives in Utrecht. Mr. Halandoni would like to come in. Louis Halandoni chairs the National Democratic Front of the Philippines' negotiating panel, which has been engaged in peace talks with the Philippine government for many years now. Apparently, you can be on a terrorist list without even knowing.
Oh, yeah. That is...
But why aren't you included in the terrorist list of the Netherlands? On the American list, you and Professor Sison are mentioned together. How do you explain that?
Misschien is het een probleem voor de Nederlandse regering dat ik een Nederlandse staatsburger ben. En daarom is het niet zo makkelijk dat ik als een terrorist wordt benoemd. Misschien denken ze een beetje meer daarover.
That sounds very arbitrary.
Omdat misschien is het zo dat Professor Sison geen vergunning tot verblijf en geen politiek asielstatus heeft.
But that doesn't mean he's a terrorist.
Ja, dat is zeker. Maar misschien denken ze dat als een Nederlandse staatsburger is het moeilijker dat ik word als terrorist benoemd. Maar het is ook mogelijk dat dat later komt.
Apparently, Dutch citizens cannot be called terrorists as easily as Filipinos like Professor Sison. Sison is included in the long list of supposed terrorists that the Bush administration once dealt with. The UN Security Council has a sanctions committee that decides who should and should not be included in their list. How the UN does this was also discussed by the international jurists who convened in Amsterdam last Friday.
De besluiten binnen het sanctiecomité worden allemaal unaniem genomen. Zijn niet toegankelijk voor het publiek, ze hoeven geen reden te geven. En als een lidstaat, bijvoorbeeld Zweden, graag wil dat namen van haar burgers van de lijst werden verwijderd, moet Zweden een verzoek indienen namens de burgers bij het sanctiecomité. De namen circuleren in lidstaten hebben tijd, 2 dagen of 2 weken zelfs, om bezwaar aan te tekenen. Als geen bezwaar wordt aangetekend, dus weer een zogenaamde no objection procedure, worden de namen automatisch verwijderd. Maar als één lidstaat van mening is dat de namen niet verwijderd moeten worden, blijven zij gewoon op de lijst staan.
Is it true that the UN list is predominantly based on the US list?
Dit is inderdaad het geval. De VS-lijst was zeer bepalend voor de VN-lijst en de intelligentiediensten van de Verenigde Staten hebben heel veel invloed op de samenstelling van de VN-lijst. In feite gebeurt het dan ook om van de lijst af te komen, kan je niet alleen maar met het sanctiecomité onderhandelen, maar moet je vooral ook met de Amerikanen onderhandelen.
For the College of Law of the University of Leiden, it is also not clear how people in organizations are included in the terrorist list. To what extent can we talk about arbitrariness?
Ja, ik denk dat het probleem is dat die vraag moeilijk te beantwoorden is. Juist omdat de informatie die wordt gebruikt om personen op een van de vele sanctielijsten te plaatsen, die is niet openbaar. Dus het is heel moeilijk om te achterhalen om welke reden een persoon op een sanctielijst geplaatst wordt. En je zou kunnen zeggen dat is dus eigenlijk al willekeur, want alleen als je duidelijk aangeeft dit zijn de criteria die we gebruiken om te bepalen of iemand op een lijst komt, zou je kunnen zeggen dan heb je een doorzichtig systeem. En dat is er op dit moment, bestaat dat in ieder geval niet. Het is niet duidelijk hoe zwaar het bewijs tegen iemand moet zijn om hem als terrorist te beschouwen, of iemand die het terrorisme ondersteunt en hem dus op een door sancties te treffen.
But does the Dutch government have to follow Bush?
Nee, Nederland moet Bush niet volgen. Op zich is er geen verplichting voor Nederland, dus om iedereen die door Bush als terrorist gekwalificeerd is ook in Nederland door financiële sancties te treffen.
Is there a remote possibility that the Dutch government will kick you out in the direction of the USA?
There is a possibility. That's the worst possibility. The U.S. can request for my provisional detention pending their giving evidence against me, or they can request outright extradition.
The Dutch government doesn't want to answer our questions. Meanwhile, The Hague will try to have Professor Sison, the CPP and the NPA included in the European Union's terrorist list. The court case season filed against the Dutch state starts in the first week of November. He demands from the government that his name be removed from all lists of terrorists.